Today, we're going to be talking about rents and why you should be looking to increase the rent that you charge from your property. See, we at Master Passive Income, we invest in rental properties. We buy one property that we hold on to for a long period of time, and we make $250 or more in passive income from every single property that we buy. And imagine if you have one property at $250 a month, that is $3,000 a year. That's passive income. Now, if you had 10 properties, that's $2,500 a month and $30,000 a year. And if you scale it up even more, get to 20 properties, that's $60,000 a year. That's more than most people make in their salary. And that's passive income. So you guys can absolutely do this. And this is something that we talk about here all the time. My name is Dustin Heiner, and I'm here to help you learn how to quit that JOB, that just over broke job, by investing in real estate rental property so you never, ever have to work a job again. Thinking about raising rents, now as you're owning a house, you might be thinking, oh, I don't want to disrupt the tenants. I don't want the tenants to get either upset at me or whatever. Those thoughts go through landlords' heads. For some reason, we do. We just kind of feel like that. Like, oh, I wouldn't want to raise it on me, so I shouldn't raise it on somebody else. Well, talk to us about your question and how this came about. Like, this would be a great podcast episode. Let's talk about it. Talk to us about what you were going through, and then how, through me coaching you, we actually got this to work out well for you.
Absolutely, yes. And so Dustin's taught me so much, and I look at a lot of the course videos. But I came to a situation where I had the opportunity to raise rents, and so I asked Dustin. I told him the rent is this amount, and market rents is this amount. I think it was like 600 was the current rents, and the market rents was like 700, and on a particular side of a duplex. And a part of me did feel a little bit guilty, which we all go through, to raise the rents during the pandemic. But I knew it was the right thing to do. I was giving my tenant a discount for almost a year, and so I asked Dustin was his thoughts on raising the rent, and Dustin said, Absolutely, you should raise the rent, but you could do it in a different way." And what Dustin talked about is gradually raising the rent, especially if it's a good tenant. And so what we did was raise the rent from 600 to 625, and we let the tenant know that, hey, market rents is 700, but because you've been so good, you've been paying over straight through the pandemic and everything. We'll gradually get you to market rents, and so we raised it to 625, and it was so easy. Like sometimes it's like we freak out and was like, you know, I feel bad raising the rents, and like Dustin said, I wouldn't want anyone to raise rents on me. So why should I raise the rents on my tenants? Well, absolutely, you should do it. And we're going to talk about some of the key points why you should do it in this episode today.
So, Charles, what is the main reason why we should start raising or be raising rents and not just keeping in? Because I bought houses where the rents were like literally 20 or 30% below what the market rents, because the landlord was, oh, they've been in there for so long and I didn't want to raise rents on them. But why should we raise rents as our rent is capable of, rents, the average rents go up. We're looking at either keeping it the same or keeping it the same to make sure our tenants feel good. Why should we raise them up in general? I have a lot of my own reasons, but I want to know what are the whys that you come up with.
Absolutely, Dustin. So we a lot of times we feel guilty to do it, but we have reasons. So it's not just the emotional side of things where we feel we feel sorry for the tenant, but there's also some logical reasons why. So what tends to happen every year? Inflation. A lot of times inflation. And so prices, expenses, everything goes up. And these expenses are also going up to us as landlords over time. And so it's my first reason is because it's fair. Is fair. If market rents are 700 and you're paying 600 and my prices are increasing, then rents should also increase.
Taxes go up. Yeah. Insurance
Taxes
goes up.
go up,
Yeah.
insurance, all of that goes up. So that's my absolute first reason, because prices are going up for us, expenses are going up for us as landlords, and so the rent should go up in a similar pattern, because we are, we're in this business to provide for our family as well. And so this is our bread and butter. So you absolutely need to increase your rents to offset inflation and to offset your expenses. And the goal of this is to always be able to make at least 250 or more in passive income and cash flow. So that's like one of my biggest reasons right there, Dustin, is our expenses are going up, and it's only fair to do so. If market rent is up, then our tenant rents should go up.
Yeah, and on top of that, I mean, I have lots of other reasons why. Obviously, this is where we feed our family. Interest goes up, or not interest, sorry, insurance goes up, taxes go up, life just in general, there's inflation, all that sort of stuff, like you said. And here's another big one for me. So I have a property in Houston that I'm thinking of specifically where I have a tenant that lives inside the property. And literally for 3 years, this is how I learned my lesson. For 3 years, I kept their rent at 1625, I think 1625, but the rent was should have been like 1800 or maybe 1850. Now it's like should be 1950. So this is what happened. So they signed a 2-year lease at 1625, which I probably should have just won and raised the rents after the first year. But it was a 2-year lease at 1625. The second year or the third year rolled around. So when I was going to renew the lease, I said, you know what, you guys have been good tenants in there. Let me go ahead and keep you at 625 one more year because I wasn't really thinking straight and I wasn't thinking about all that other sort of stuff. My insurance is going up, all that stuff. And the third year, or after the third year was up, I talked to my tenants and said, "Hey, now I'm going to have to raise up the rents just a little bit, just keep up with the taxes and insurance and all that sort of stuff." It's almost like I never gave them any benefit, or never. I didn't even give them 3 years of such a low. Let's say the first year, granted, 1625. Then the next year, second year, I would have increased it. Third year, I would increase it more. We'd already be at like maybe 1800, at least 1750. But they acted as if they didn't get a dime. I said, you know what? To myself, I'm like, oh my goodness. I literally just gave these people like $5,000 over these last 2 years that I could have put in my pocket. But they did. It was so feeling a little unappreciated. I said, you know what? It's time for me to raise rents. They were griping and complaining. I literally had to itemize out, okay, X, Y, and Z, and told them everything. And it's something we talk about in the real estate wealth builders, how to do all this sort of stuff. But so I actually said, you know what? It's going to go from 1625 to 1750. You've kept it at 3 years at 1625. It's going to go up to 1750. So as soon as it did, they were upset. But this has been an entire year now at 1750, and they know the market rent is like $1,900 now. So they're like, I'm still getting a really good deal. And so, like Charles said, what I'm doing is I'm slowly increasing it. The first one was a big jump because it's been 3 years. But the next one is probably going to be up to like maybe 1685, or sorry, 1785, maybe close to 1800, but I won't break over 1800. The following year, if they're still there, maybe 1825. So just gradually bring it up on them. So we could definitely do that. But yeah, that's a big one for me. Is like the tenants, they're not grateful. Like it doesn't seem, or sorry, that's a big broad stroke. My tenant was not grateful for all the money that I saved them. I said, you didn't have to pay $5,000.
Absolutely.
Oh well. Oh well. It's in the past now. Okay. So let's talk more about like the particulars, like the principles of raising rents, Charles.
So one of the questions that a lot of people may have is, how do I know when to raise the rent to market rents? Or how do I even find out what market rents are? So that's one of the things we want to share with you. And so one of the ways that you know when it's time to raise market rents is by simply doing some research and figuring out what are other properties renting for in the area, right? And you can do that in a number of ways. You can look on websites with listings like Zillow. Zillow also lists the rents. You can look at Zillow. I think it's something. I forgot the name of that website, but we can include some of those websites if you want to know. But one of the biggest
It's like
websites that we like,
Trulia,
Trulia,
Redfin. There's a bunch of websites like that. Yeah.
that's the one I was looking for, Dustin. Trulia. One of the tools that we like to use at Master Passive Income is Rent-O-Meter. Rent-O-Meter, and Dustin actually has a really cool discount that you can get through Master Passive Income. So if you search masterpassiveincome.com/rent-o-meter, again, masterpassiveincome.com/rent-o-meter, you can check out that website to look at what market rents are. and we'll also include it in the show notes for you as well. But one of the biggest ways that you check market rents is asking your PM, your property manager are he or she, they are your eyes on the ground. They are going to know the market way better than we do. And so your property manager will let you know what the market rents are in that area from first time experience. They are renting other properties in the area, so they can tell you that, hey, in Dustin's situation, you're renting the property for 1,600 and the market rents is 1,900. We got to do something. We need to bring this up. And your property managers want to increase the rent too, because the more money you make as a landlord, the more money they make. And so that's one of the ways that we can check it. Sometimes we may not look at these things, but check these things, because as investors, is so important and is critical for successful buy and hold investing, is for you to make sure that you have a profitable business and making sure that you're increasing your rents.
Yeah, and Charles, you're 100% right that the expert in the area is your property manager. I mean, obviously, a realtor would be an expert in that area, inspector, anybody does insurance, roofers, like everybody who lives in an area is going to be an expert in that area. So I've had people who have come on and into the coaching, into the Real Estate Wealth Builders Group coaching. And as I'm showing them how to actually build a business, they would say things like, oh, can't we just rely on this website that has all like a big database of it, like Zillow or Trulia or Redfin? Can we just rely on that information? I'm like, absolutely not. Okay, let me ask you this, like kind of rhetorically, because you're going to answer it just like I answer it. I Would you rather rely all your future income and your money that you have now and invest in a property that a big database that covers the entire nation, a company that is a for-profit company that, I'm not saying they're doing anything shady, but a for-profit company, they have a database of the entire nation, and they just take like little random samples and they try to make it seem like it works well for every single particular property, but it's not necessarily that. It's broad, like it's really, really broad. Would you rather trust something like that that's broad, nationwide, just a big database, or would you rather trust literally the person that is an expert in the area that can actually tell you, hey, I have a house just like that, literally around the block, and I'm only renting it for 800. This guy's telling you can rent it for 900. I'm telling you, I literally cannot get it rented for $900. I can only get 800. That is such better information because experts are telling you. That's something that I try to help everybody understand, is that we build the business first. We have everybody work in our business. We build their business and we actually invest properly, as opposed to, because here's what some people, what they're going to tell you how to invest in real estate. You find a property, you run the numbers, you make sure that you're making passive income every single month, you buy it. Then you find somebody to fix it up. Then you find a property manager. Then you find, then. That's all backwards. What we do at Master Passive Income, we do basically everything they told you to do, we do it all backwards. We build the business first. Now, for everybody listening, and here's another URL I'm going to give you. You guys know I tend to give you a lot of URLs, but they will be in the description as well. Go to masterpassiveincome.com/free course. I'll give you my free real estate investing course. It'll downloadable PDF. You literally walk through everything, show you how to find properties, fund properties, find an area of the country to invest, how to find the right property manager. Everything I'm telling you to do, it'll be inside there. Go to masterpassiveincome.com/free course. It'll be in the description as well. Okay, so Charles, what's the next thing we need to talk about as we are raising rents?
Absolutely. So as we are raising rents, we touched on this at the beginning. We touched on this is gradually raising your rents in certain situations. And so one of the things we want to look at is, are they a good tenant, right? If they're a good tenant and they're paying on time, it's probably better for you to raise the rents gradually for that tenant and keep a good tenant than for you to bring in a brand spanking new tenant who may not be a good fit. We hope that they're a good fit, and we do our due diligence, we do our background checks, we do all that to make sure. But if we have history with a tenant, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, they're paying on time, maybe you want to look at the raising rents gradually approach. And so one of the things my property manager likes to say is, it's to keep a good tenant in place, you don't want to increase it more than 10% of the monthly rents. And so, Dustin, I just wanted to ask you, what do you think on about that? About not increasing more than 10%? Do you have like a threshold or a number that you go by when you're increasing rents?
Absolutely, with the number wise. So with that one tenant in Houston, it was more definitely more than 10%, maybe like 12% that I raised it up. But it's literally because after 3 years, it's time to do a jump. But I like to tend towards 5, maybe 6% increase a year. Now, if you do a 6 month lease, and you could possibly increase it up another little bit in the middle there. But what I like to do is 1 year lease and raise about 6%, and over time you'll get there. I mean, you'll eventually get to where it's at the right dollar amount for the current rent in that area. But now, Charles, now you're talking about if you have a tenant in there that you have a good history with. What about a property? What would you suggest for you're buying a property? It has a tenant in there. They're telling you, the landlord's telling you they've been in there. They're showing the lease statements. They've been in there for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, but they felt bad and they kept it low, just like lots of landlords do. What should you do in that case?
In that case, so that commitment is between the tenant and that landlord who's selling you the property, but that's not your commitment to keep. And so again, we're in this to you can't look at it one way. We're in this to feed our families. This is our bread and butter. And so if market rents is 800 and the tenant is only paying 600, market rents are the fair rents. That's the standard. And so I would absolutely increase it in situations like that. Now I would say, Dustin, I would honor the lease. If I buy the property and the tenant already has a lease for 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, or whatever. I would definitely honor the lease, but when the lease is up, I would personally increase it. Would you, Dustin?
Definitely. And I think legally speaking, you must honor the lease. I don't think you can do anything outside of that.
Hmm.
It's definitely transferred when you sell the house. And I completely agree with you. I would definitely would. Now, here's the thing that people might be thinking too. They might think, well, I don't have any history with this person, and let's just go ahead and jump the like just make it right there. Because if they move out, they move out. I'll get somebody new in there. My opinion is I love people who stay in a house for a long time. If they've already been there for 2 years or more, they want to stay. I want tenants to stay. It's a lot of money to turn over a property. I mean, a lot of money. Turn over, then move out, you fix it up, even if you need to evict them. I mean, like that's a lot of money. Might as well do it gradually, even if they are brand new or you're brand new to that property. They've been in there for a while. So what I would say if this was a scenario, $800 for the rents, but you're only getting 600, I would say, oh, as soon as the lease is up, we're letting you know that it's going to go up to 675. Like I would increase it more than 10% because that's a good gap to cover, from 600 to 800. So if you're finishing out the lease, I would raise it up to maybe 675, 650, 675. You got to play it, however best you feel, but have an understanding that you're going to be raising it over time. And my goal is to keep the tenant in there. I want to have a certain threshold where I know a tenant could pay more because market rents are like 800, 900, whatever it might be. I know there's a threshold that eventually they're like, okay, now it's time for me to find another property. But right now, they've been in there for 5 years at $600. They've been getting a screaming deal. They're not going to move because it's that low. But they've already invested there. They're already, or life wise there. So what I would do is I would look to start gradually raising it up because I love. Doesn't matter if they're long term tenants with me. If they're long term tenants with that property, that is super valuable, super super valuable. They don't want to move, and so they're only going to move when you make them have the desire to move and get a lower rents other places. So as you're talking to your tenants, or sorry, we don't talk to our tenants. Our property managers do. I don't want my tenants to know who I am. So the property managers are going to be saying, okay, market rents are 800. We're at 600. We're going to move it to 650. Then the next year, we're probably going to move it up to closer to 700 because we got to get it to market rents because taxes are going up, insurance is going up, repairs, we're breaking this, that, and that. So that's what I would do when there's already a tenant in place.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dustin, one of the key things you said is gradually, and I think sometimes we or the tenants don't realize that, hey, we're doing them a favor, right? If the market rents is 900 and they're paying 600, and you're gradually increasing it, well, if you increase it, if the market rents is 900 and they're paying 600, and you increase it to, let's say, 700. just throwing a number out there, then you're giving them, you're still giving them a good deal, because
That's
they could pay.
$2,400 discount of what they would normally pay if they moved into a new place.
Exactly, exactly, and so it's really a win-win for them. So I think you should definitely increase it. But I do agree, Dustin, that if they've been at the property for a long time, that's kind of enough history. If they've been at the property and been paying every month for a long time,
Yes,
that
yes,
I want to
absolutely.
put that paying a paying tenant, then absolutely we want to keep them in that property as long as possible.
And keep kind of going with along with that thought. I've even used this as somewhat of a tool to have bad tenants move out. I'm like, man, this tenant's such a headache. My property manager is having such a hard time. I don't want them to have a hard time. And they are not paying on time. And it'd be nice to get them out, but they eventually catch up. Okay, well, either going to make them get out or we're going to make it worth our while because my property managers are spending so much time with them, following up on calls and trying to collect the rents, all that sort of stuff. It's costing more for their time to actually deal with them. Let's raise it up. Let's raise it up to above market rents. If they're willing to pay that, I'm willing to stomach them in there and have my property manager spend that time to be in there. If they're not, they're going to move out just because, hey, it's too expensive. So I just want you to understand that if you have a problem tenant, make it worth your time and have them pay to make it worth your time.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%, Dustin. Yeah, you can definitely, it's definitely a great opportunity, a great way to get a bad tenant out by raising the rent too. So yeah, if the tenant is a good tenant, definitely do it gradually. You definitely want to keep that tenant. Bad tenant, let's take it all the way up.
So what's next? What do we got? What are another other things we need to talk about for
Yeah.
raising rents?
So yeah, Dustin, I think the final thing we want everyone to know is you don't have to feel guilty about this. This is something that a lot of people feel guilty for. One of the things that we did at Master Passive Income, we post a lot of engaging questions and videos, and Dustin's do group coaching. We do a lot of cool stuff like that to help the students learn. One of the questions that we posted in the student group is, what would you do in a situation? I literally posted the situation I was going through raising rents. We posted. I have a tenant, long-term tenant who's been um, paying rents on time, and now it's time to raise the rents. Possibly, we have that opportunity. What would you do? And it was just amazing to hear what everyone has to say. And a lot of people felt bad doing it, especially during COVID. A lot of people, they said they wouldn't do it at all, and then some people was like, absolutely, you should do it. But I like what Dustin advised me to do. I listened to Dustin, do it gradually. So while some people said they would do it, go all the way up, and then some people said they wouldn't do it at all. I feel like Dustin had the best solution to the problem is doing it gradually. So I definitely want to say, don't feel guilty. If you feel guilty about it, remind yourself that it goes both ways, right? You're giving the tenant an opportunity. You're giving them a deal. You're when you gradually increase rent, you are still helping them. Like Dustin said, like he gave his tenant $5,000 pretty much. I mean, you're giving them an opportunity, and so so you shouldn't feel guilty for something like this. You got to look at the big picture. So that would be my final piece of advice: is don't feel guilty as you're doing it. You're still helping them, and you've got to look out for you and your family as well.
Definitely. And as you're thinking about raising rents, it really comes down to you doing your own, really just a gut call. If you really want to do it, I'm 100% with Charles that if you start feeling guilty, realize that this is a business. This is a business that you're going to have increased costs. Like, who knows? The next year, you might have the lawmakers pass a horrific tax that's going to cost you another, like, I don't know, $100 a year, $200 a year. And unless you accounted for that, it started raising rents. you're going to get stuck with that. Same thing, insurance goes up. So you need to account for all that sort of stuff. And one last thing I want to bring up. So Charles mentioned with COVID and everything, this was a year after COVID. He's thinking about raising rents on his tenants. And he said, it's tough times right now. And he asked me, and Charles, you asked me, and I said, well, I literally raised the rents like a month after COVID hit. So March hit, and it was like April. Hey guys, sorry, but I've had low rents for the last 3 years. I have to increase it because taxes are going up, insurance, everything is going up. They didn't care. They was like, oh, but you can't, how, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, and just prior to that, they were, the husband was sharing how great his business is doing literally during COVID. Oh, yeah, my business is doing so much better during COVID for some reason. Like, well, great, you're making money. Good. Let's talk about raising rents. So I raised rents literally a month or 2 months after COVID started. Charles raised rents a year after COVID started. So you guys just realize that there are going to be plenty of people that want to be on your property. I personally like to keep mine. Let's say the average rent is in a certain particular property is $900. That's the average. And so if anybody moves, they're thinking always try to put yourself in the place of the tenant. If the tenant's thinking, man, the most I could spend is $900. There's a lot of places for $900. That's like the average. And so let me move here 900. Let me move here for 900. And that's their, bottom line that they think they can, that's the max they would want to pay. It could be 1,500. It could be 1,600, depending on whichever city that you're in. And so this one particular, let's say it's $900. I personally like to be just below that by maybe 5% below that. So if $900 is like a barrier, it's hard to keep it rented at over 900. It's easy to keep it rented under 900. I put it like 875 or even 890, like 890, like right below 9. You just don't want to break that barrier to where your tenants are starting to itch. Like, you know what? They might move for $50. They might say, you know what? You're charging me 925 over here. I can get 875. Man, that's so much cheaper. They're thinking in their mind, that's so much cheaper, even though it's only $50, which $50 goes a long way, or not doesn't go that long of a way. But in their minds, 925 to 875, that feels like $100, even though it's only $50. So my perspective, I keep it just a little below the average because I want my tenants to stay. I'd much rather get $15 less every single month than spend $1,500 in a turnover because they're like, I could rent this place for $50 less or $100 less. I would rather keep them in there for the longevity. Makes it so much better. So, man, Charles, I really think, and I hope people are going to take this to heart, that they can and should raise rents.